Welcome to the LeapSheep Startup Builder Live Q&A. This is the place for any startup founder to ask burning questions that are keeping you up at night and learn from our guest founders and startup support experts. And of course, LeapSheep's own startup building team who have worked with hundreds of founders in their teams. Welcome, I'm your host today, Kirk Drage, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of LeapSheep. At LeapSheep, we're on a mission to flip the 95% startup failure rate by making expert and professional startup building guidance accessible, affordable for all founders. To founders, welcome if you've joined us live. It's great to have you here. The show is all about supporting you getting from idea to a business model hypothesis. You can then get to product market fit, then validate that you actually can before scaling up safely and avoiding that 95% failure rate. Thank you to all the founders that have sent questions in, and please drop questions into the live stream comment section on YouTube or LinkedIn, and we'll prioritize those questions as they come in. Well, today I'm super excited to have and delighted to have Alex McClung with us. Alex is the founder and CEO of Traversal Labs. He's a data engineer and has over a decade of experience in robotics with 8 years in machine learning. Can you believe he attained 100 out of 100 in his honours thesis, developing new mathematical techniques for machines to understand video? Alex provides solutions in the domain of machine learning to industrial businesses, developing camera perception algorithms to enable machines to perceive the world visually. Alex helps industrial companies facilitating the implementation of advanced AI. Alex has built MotionLogic, an AI platform to comprehend the interactions between people, tools, and materials in the manufacturing environments, improving productivity and safety. Alex, it's fabulous to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Well, we've had a couple of chats before the show, and I'm absolutely fascinated by your journey. So I'd really love you to share just a little bit of that, so the audience can get a bit of an understanding of your journey from the age of 15 developing an autonomous robot to now running Traversal Labs.
Yeah. So 12 years ago, I built my first autonomous robot. It navigates autonomously in rooms and also in outdoors as well. So given a set of GPS coordinates, it will navigate there and then use sensors to avoid obstacles on the way. Incrementally, these robots got smarter and smarter with camera capabilities and AI capabilities.
How did you stumble across that at 15 years old? What led you to that at that early age?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to build things build things that are transformative and improve our material well-being. So, robotics stood out to me as, it's got the intersection of software, electrical, and mechanical, and bringing those together into a unified platform, sensors all communicating and actuators. I found that really exciting, and bringing that data in, these machines can adapt and perceive the world and adapt to changing circumstances.
Yeah, wow. And what were some of the experiences you had in that early schooling that sort of introduced you to robotics? Was it something you got from family or through school, or?
It was self-directed, I would say. There wasn't so much support for it in schooling necessarily. There was some projects I could do in school, like for example my HSC major work. I was able to build one of the robots as for that, but yeah, self-directed from a young age. I knew I wanted to be an engineer.
Yeah, fascinating. And so obviously you say the choice of robotics is that intersection of mechanical, electrical engineering and software engineering. That makes really good sense. I think it makes more sense in hindsight, given where we know things are converging. So that's a really interesting insight. And then you've gone on to start your own company. So where did that desire or interest or even awareness come from? I don't think at university, when I was going to university, I was sort of thinking about being an entrepreneur. I was still thinking about having a career and getting a job. How did you come about?
So I guess having started projects early and keeping up momentum, I really tried to build a lot of projects early on with autonomous ground vehicles, drones, camera algorithms. I was employed during my first year of university, so I got a role in my first semester of university, developing AI models for corporate, for multinationals, and for government. And yeah, it's these projects and sort of getting a start early in the projects and then always having this, I guess, desire for autonomy and self-directed learning. Knowing that, okay, I want to design these products, these solutions that have a positive impact for humanity. And that's sort of that's why I wanted to get into engineering, and why that self-directed learning and autonomy desire led me toward building a business. So yeah, I founded Traversal Labs 3 years ago. I based a lot on the IP I developed in my honours thesis. I developed AI techniques for machines to process video. So it processes many millions of pixels and comprehends the structure and events of visual scenes.
Yeah, wow. So you've used the phrase self-directed learning there a few times, and I quite often use the phrase a growth mindset. Are you familiar with the growth mindset phrase? Is that something that's in
It
your?
seems to me like it's projects, having and I guess setting goals for yourself that are just slightly out of reach. You've got to develop a little bit. Is that sort of what you're getting at with that one?
Yeah, I think when we look at doing work with startup founders, and as they begin to hire their teams, one of the things that you want to look for, and investors will say the same thing when they're looking to invest in companies, is they want to see a team that's got a growth mindset. So the sort of parts of that is, do people have the curiosity and desire to want to improve themselves and want to expand their knowledge and experience? And so it's it's really a mindset thing more than anything else. And it seems to me that you've sort of got that installed early on. Not everyone sort of starts off with that. You at some point in your career, some people are like, oh, what's this growth mindset thing? Maybe I need to read about that and sort of change my mindset and change the way I behave. But it seems like you've sort of had that chip installed from day one.
Right. Yeah. I guess knowing sort of where the having machines that can learn and adapt, and seeing that as a goal to implement these type of technologies that have an impact on a positive impact on society. I think knowing that that's sort of that's the North Star, and then sort of figuring out, okay, project by project, product by product, idea by idea, what do I need to do to get towards to achieve that, and it's just as you said, like growth and incremental steps.
Yeah, you've obviously got a passion for learning by the sound of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that kind of helps. And something else you said there that I think is really interesting, and that's that you in your first year of uni, you got some work in the field that you're pursuing.
Correct. Yeah.
And I see a lot of university kids working at gas stations or clothing stores or working in bars and pubs and things. But I think there's something really beneficial about getting involved in the industry that you're trying to get into really, really early in your journey.
Yeah. What that enabled me to do was sort of to learn, I guess, not only about the engineering side of things, but also about I guess like commercial transactions, or engaging in contract-based work. Learning how that side of things works.
And how did you come across that job? Did it land in your lap? Did you have to go chase it? How did that come about?
Yeah. So since 2012, I've been attending the Sydney Hackerspace. And from that, people saw some of the projects I was doing, like the robots and that sort of thing, and I got an introduction and then to the university and got a role from that.
I think that's really interesting insight. I mean, that similarly happened for me as I was involved from high school in sort of the PC industry, which is kind of the space that I focused on. And I think if you come out of university having not really worked in the space that you want to work in, I think the learning that you do during your degree, it's hard to be as directed and contextual. without that experience. So yeah, I haven't sort of thought a lot about that, but I think that's a really interesting
I
interesting
think it
insight.
calibrates it. Like you sort of learn it early on. You start to learn, okay, well, these are the gaps that I had when I first got my first role and sort of thing, and you can calibrate the rest of your studies around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely fascinating. And so the entrepreneurship side, like it can be a bit of a scary path for people to go out and start your own company. Um, what what gave you the confidence and the desire and the belief and all those things that many of us struggle with when making that leap?
Yeah, so I guess having the projects and to and the background IP to build that, and also having starting to build a bit of a network, like going to networking events and sort of talking to people to learn what problems they're facing, and people, like when I first started the business, the business has flipped on its head substantially since I started it, like the way it, like the business model and the operating model. The people came to me asking about robot installs, and obviously just having completed the thesis with the cameras, my flavor of it was with the cameras to guide the robots and have the robots adapt. And then, I guess sort of the key is having customers and prospects that sort of come to you that indicate, okay, this is the problems I'm facing. Can you fix that? And just, I think just having the willingness to have a go and yeah.
Yeah. So did you effectively have customers before you started the business? People coming to you and asking for things before you said, "Oh, I'm going to turn this into a business," or?
Yeah, people asking, people that were aware of what I do in the robotic space, my skill
Yeah.
sets there with the robotics and the computer vision, and sort of asking questions, and yeah, that's how I got the first customer, through that, networking, and then coming to me with, okay, we've got a manufacturing environment, and yeah, questions around that, and then I just went from there. Started small with like a feasibility study, and sort of then some pilots with a few different customers, and yeah, just working on that.
Yeah, that's great. It is a bit of a blueprint. I love listening to stories from founders that you can replicate. So many founders you meet and you listen to the story about how they got to success, and there was some magical event that they made happen through lots of hard work, but it's something that's really difficult for other entrepreneurs to replicate. But the story that you're describing is something that's really replicable for other people that want to follow in the path. So joining things like maker fairs and creating projects where people can see the outcome of your efforts and evaluate your skill and experience and get to know you. And this is one of the big things in business as you start to build products and services. The barrier to doing business with customers is often trust and credibility. They're meeting you for the first time. It's like, well, how do they assess you? By being involved in those kind of maker groups and maker fairs and building projects, you get to meet people over and over again, and they see you and they can see you're a nice person, you're easy to work with, you're enthusiastic, you're smart, and so that trust and credibility gets built up through those kind of environments. So it's really great to see that.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, and with that, like some of those projects early on too, like I started with the ground vehicles, like the robots that navigate. I built two of those, uh, which with the sensors, and they navigate autonomously, and then drones, and then all sorts of projects like that. And I think having that, and I did go to like the maker fair type of thing, and to demonstrate some of those capabilities, and I think it's just the continuity of that.
Yeah, really, really, really good. So changing gears, let's talk a little bit about Traversal Labs. What's the vision, and how has that changed since you first started the business, and now that you've worked with a dozen or so customers?
Yeah, so manufacturing plants are complex. Production problems exist, but they're not immediately surfaced, and production managers are operating without all the facts. So there's a lot of hidden complexity on the production floor, and there's a lot happening, a lot of movement of people, tools, and materials. There's it's limited in the field of view, like you can in what a production manager or a safety manager can perceive. You can do a Gemba walk, so a walk through the factory, to look at the different parts systematically, but you're still limited to a constrained field of view, like one machine at a time, one process at a time.
Yeah.
Whereas the cameras provide enhanced awareness, comprehending what's going on, navigating this hidden complexity. So there's clear comprehension of the process, and it's trade shows and sort of speaking with customers. Trade shows are quite good for that. Spoke with sometimes many hundreds of customers in a compressed event, and that sort of learning about the customer needs and the problem space, that shapes it practically. Like the AI experience takes time to build, and that's one thing, but it's also got to be you've got to be customer centric. You've got to know what the problems are that the customers have, and talk to customers. From that, as I said before, I started with the robots. Now we focus on computer vision. We like exclusively on MotionLogic. So our platform for comprehending production events to improve productivity and safety. So this has been directed by understanding the pain points of customers, the pain points, gain creators, and the value proposition that we can provide.
So it sounds like at some point in your journey you realised that this issue with manufacturing, where they had very limited visibility of what was actually happening on the manufacturing plant floor, from a coverage perspective, you're not covering the entire process. You might be just covering steps, and you've got this time perspective as well. You're not covering something 24/7, but obviously when you put cameras around, you can start covering both much more geographical space and also cover the time aspect as well. Is that something you learned after you started the company, or you already knew that before you started the company? How did that understanding of the problem space evolve?
I understood part of that before I started the company, but speaking with customers refined it. So I grew up in the Hunter Valley, which is the powerhouse of manufacturing and energy. My family's in manufacturing and mining, and I studied in Sydney, so I caught the train down to Sydney regularly, and sort of seeing, like working in an AI research center, and then seeing manufacturing. You could see gaps, like AI adoptions, present in finance and law and those sort of commercial sectors, but it's not reaching the industrials. So I saw, first of all, a huge gap in AI adoption in the industrials, and then when I started speaking with customers, I started learning about, okay, what are the problems that are occurring, and some examples of that is like, say, safety plans, for example. You do a safety study, you do a risk assessment, and it sits there, maybe posted to the wall. It sits there for 2 years, and it gets redone every couple of years. Like, there's continual improvement to that, but there's no proactive indication on the process. So it's having clear visibility on safety. Like, one of our customers is in food production, and they've got repeated strain motion from working with knives and cutting the food. So shoulder and elbow injuries, you've got risk of laceration from the knives, and there's a lack of clear comprehension of that process. So this data enables that to be made safer. And similarly, from a productivity perspective, there's spaghetti movement in a factory, like movement of people, tools, and materials, all moving around the factory, sometimes repeated motion. We've got an example with a train manufacturing company. There's lots of excess motion in the process that that they brought us in with the cameras to optimize this, to look at, okay, here's the spaghetti flow of people, tools, and materials, and to make the to reduce excess motion from the process.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's so great to hear you talking about a business process that you're applying the technology to. Quite often, one of the challenges that we have as entrepreneurs is we know what is possible with the technology. We understand what a technology can do, and so we're often a solution looking for a problem.
Mhm.
And the problems that are the most obvious are the ones that we know about. So, and I think we talked about this before we jumped on the call, is the obvious place to put computer vision might be on a robot to improve, the robot performance. But of course, that's already a somewhat digitized system. And so the incremental improvements over whatever technology they're using today is probably relatively small. But you found a space which is really not using technology in any meaningful way. You talked about the fact that you might do a safety audit, and the feedback cycle might be a couple of years before you do that audit again. So if you put some sort of system into that place, into that space, that problem space, the amount of value that you can add is massive. And I like I think it might be Peter Thiel from his book 0 to 1 that talks about, if you're going to build a new product, you need to be offering 10 times the value of the solutions that you're replacing if you really want a good quality adoption. And so it seems to me that you've done that, and you've really found the right kind of problem space to apply some technology to. So I love that. And so that probably leads me into the next question, which, and you sort of touched on it there, is you seem to have done a lot of market research, and you seem to have done a lot of speaking with customers. I'm really interested to learn from you, like, where did you get an understanding to even do that? Because I speak to so many founders that jump straight into building products, and working with customers is something they want to do once they've built the product. Whereas you've really thought about that a long way before you've built your platform, your product. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in university, I think it was my third year, we did a course on enterprising, like the enterprising professional, and that sort of went through things like the value proposition canvas, the strategizer type approaches.
That's Alex Osterwalder's canvases, yeah.
So those sort of approaches for modeling, customer needs, customer pains and gains, that sort of it. Yeah, it was an eye opener in the sense that, okay, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. You've got to, building technology, you've got to, find what the customer problems are. You've got to, as you just said before, it's got to have that 10x improvement or significant improvement on this pain that the customer is facing. And technology for the sake of technology, it doesn't work in a startup context. You've got to be customer-led, customer-driven, in the sense that, okay, the customers indicate these are the problems we're facing in our production environment, and then it's the role of a founder to apply, especially the technical founder, to apply that, to translate that into a business outcome.
Yeah.
So, you've got to determine what the customer problem is, and then from that, it's very much an iterative process. So there's increments of value. I always like to think in terms of increments of value. So this is where we are now. Okay, what's the next step that would deliver this next increment of value? And then, but to get there, you've got to have direction from the customer, and you've got to, in an engineering context now, you've got to then break that down into engineering first principles. So what needs to happen to achieve this increment of value? And this increment of value shouldn't be something that you have already. It should be a little bit out of reach. You've got to work for it. And then, when you get there, you've now got this new capability, this new solution that's, it's not just like a piece of code or some scattered item artifact. It's an increment, so it's like a whole vertical that you like. When I say increment of value, I'm really talking, okay, this problem, like let's solve this vertical.
Yeah. So it sounds like this class that you took during university that taught you about the value proposition design canvas was quite it was quite influential in your thinking of how to apply the technology in a way that creates business value.
Correct. Yeah.
And do you think the fact that, as you talked about before, you'd done some work experience even before that, and so you'd seen industry, do you think that sort of played a part as well in helping to make that class useful?
Yes, I think so. It's that contextualization of, okay, like starting, like working with multinationals in my first year of university, like consulting projects, learning about, okay, this is the problems that the customers are facing, and how can we solve that from a research perspective. And then I guess, yeah, that was that reframing in that course where I learned, I learned, it's got to be driven by, you write down all the problems the customers are facing, and also you ask open-ended questions. Like, don't assume that you know what the customer wants, because you don't, as the engineer, as the founder, as the designer. And you've got to, you potentially can, like, have some idea of what, and you should, like, in the context, like, you've got the professional background with the AI or the engineering background, but the customer has to say, okay, this is the problem that we're facing, and then you build a solution around that.
Yeah. I love that Steve Jobs quote. It's not the customer. It's not the customer's job to know what they want. And unfortunately, a lot of engineers take that approach to say, well, there's no point talking to the customer if they don't know what they want. But of course, that's not true. Is that you've got to have the conversations to understand what the problem space is that at least the customer perceives. Customers generally know what their goals are. They don't know what all the problems they need to overcome to achieve those goals. And that's part of what you're discovering there, isn't it, through that question?
It becomes a convergence. So the customer is got, one direction, the technical capability has got another direction. They're never going to meet exactly, but then, it's kind of like divergent and convergent thinking. Like you bring together the customer ideas and then the technical capabilities, and technical ideas from, like past projects, or in my case, robots that I built, things like that. So that applies constraints to the problem, and then it's sort of, and then when you get to that increment of value, it's this fusion of these two different, what the customer pain point and the technical constraints, then you start to get that increment of value.
Yeah, great. Look, we've got a question that's come in. I thought I might throw to you. So the question is from Jeff. Let me see if I can put this on the screen here. We go. Jeff says his partner's in the forestry industry, and their mill in the past 35 years has become highly automated. What's the difference between robotics and automation? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, so I definitely see robotics is. I think robotics is part of automation. Automation includes things like SCADA or PLCs, like the network of devices that industrial machines communicate on. Robotics is part of that. In my in the way I think about it, Walker Reynolds has introduced this concept of unified namespace, where I think this is starting to get to the next level of automation and towards cognition. But the unified namespace is bringing together all the different devices on an industrial network as producers and consumers of information. So any machine can communicate with any other machine that needs to subscribe to the information that's relevant to it, whether it's a camera, a sensor, an IoT device. It produces information onto the network, and then the devices consume that on a unified namespace. And then with the AI, with what that AI unlocks is cognition. So now you've got all this data on the network, which I consider to be like like an automation approach. It's just getting all this data on the network, doing some logical operations or some sense making of that and getting, making decisions from that. That's automation. And especially in more of a fixed routine sense. So the robots do the same thing over and over. Now, cognition is where the machines learn from data. They find patterns. This could be video data. This could be audio data of like say machines spinning up or spinning down to find a fault. If there's noises, or the video data is looking at the motion of people, tools, and materials on a production floor. So this next, what AI is introducing is cognition. So you can then learn from large volumes of data. You can find patterns, and you can comprehend what's going on to make clear decisions. And this is cognition is the next approach and the uplift from automation.
So part of Jeff sort of put a follow-on point there, saying the reason for the question is you've got a lot of automation specialists today in factories in these kind of environments, and the assumption is that when we introduce robotics, we're going to need a completely different skill set. So what does it mean for the existing workers? How does the workforce change? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think you're in a position to comment on that?
Yeah, so a lot of times when I see a robot in a factory, there's usually a big bucket of parts next to it. They get handed over to the production workers to finish off. The robots, they don't have, I guess, the fine-grained detail precision to do like those very fine-grained tasks that
the human can.
That the human can. So usually, there's a big bucket of parts that that the robot hands over to the people, and it takes on the dull, dirty, and dangerous tasks. Robots take on these tasks. I think automation, as I see in the following question there's a question about skill sets. I think data is a big one as well, like being able to, so there's automation there, but being able to look at historian data, like logs of the machines, and I think that will be a key skill set in the context of AI. Is having that, being able to process the data and make sense of the data, and there's a lot of work that can be done there.
Yeah, I mean, having seen these kind of changes happen many times through my career now, going from sort of mainframes, for example, to client-server PC, and then from client-server to cloud, and then desktop to mobile. The trend that I've seen in this space is that to put those kind of solutions into a company, either you've got workers in the company that are putting those solutions in place, so you've got an IT department doing work, or you've got integration and maintenance department on a manufacturing floor, or you've got external providers coming in, integrators coming in and putting solutions in place. I think for an individual employee, if you want to sort of protect your career, you've got to think about how forward-thinking is your employer, whether you're working for an actual customer or whether you're working for one of those integrators. Are they beginning to bring products and services from this new wave? And so as we think about robotics, which is, as Jeff alluded to, it's a bit different from the typical kind of automation that we've seen on factory floor with SCADA and other kind of previous generation technologies. If you're a business that is just in that old school and you're just continuing to do the current paradigm, your career is probably in trouble. If you're working for an employer that's tinkering with these new approaches and you're learning about the new approaches, you're probably going to be good. The challenge in all of these technology adoptions is, adoption doesn't happen overnight. I saw I think Ben Evans's report for 2025 talks about something like only 35% of enterprise workloads are now SaaS solutions, with the balance still being on-prem software. And so even a technology that we would sort of call old and boring, like SaaS, because it's been around for more than a decade, the penetration, it takes a long time. So even though the argument might be, well, things are moving faster and time cycles are compressing, I think from a career change point of view, you've got plenty of time. But if you're not starting to tinker with the new things now, like the sort of things that you're working on, if you're in that industrial automation space and you're not starting to tinker with the stuff, then that's probably not a good sign. and maybe those maker labs and things that you're involved with is a good way to get started. And I wonder if you have any advice for people that may be in the manufacturing sector that are working there today that are not working with the kind of technologies that you're working with. What advice would you give to them to start to get across these technologies and start to think about their career direction?
Yeah, so certainly the maker spaces are like very good approach, which blends like the uh, mechanical, electrical, and software. There's laser cutting, 3D printing, getting on top of those sort of trends. That next step and robotics. That sort of is, that's a good place to start in the sense of that it's combining these practical, mechanical, and electrical skills with software and data and
Are there any websites that you recommend if you're not in a big city where there's a makerspace? Where would you go online?
So there's lists of makerspaces online. There's the in Sydney. I can speak for the Robots and Dinosaurs makerspace. There are lists. I don't have the URL on me, but there are lists of makerspaces online.
Yeah, really good advice. Let's pivot back and talk about your journey and what you're doing with MotionLogic. So you built a platform called MotionLogic. That's obviously still very much a platform in development, but talk us through some of the challenges you face so far and what are some of the unique benefits that brings.
Yeah. So we solve 4 fundamental issues in manufacturing. That's weighting, excess motion, defects, and non-used talent. So the first two,
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
First two, weighting and excess motion, is looking at dwell time. So such as there could be an upstream process that requires the delivery of parts, and there's dwell time now because it's waiting for those parts to come through. So how can we optimize the process more broadly to optimize the flow, to ensure there's balance between the different workstations? Because that's a lot of the time, if there is waiting, it's a matter of the workflow design, because there's often a build up of parts in like a batch or at one workstation. And that means that there's the downstream process has dwell time or delay waiting for those parts to come through. The software can comprehend this process. Excess motion, so that this has both a productivity and a safety benefit. So like in the context of safety, you've got bending and twisting. So like, say for example, reaching for parts, like bending, twisting, from a parts repository and then to the product, or say cranking of the neck to reach sort of, maybe that it's not, the station's not ergonomically set up in the most safe, comfortable manner.
Yeah. And you've got some great photos, haven't you, about things not being done properly in sites?
And there's a lot of stuff that is being done properly too, and I think it's a balance. So this provides clear comprehension of what's going on, and in a manner that preserves privacy. So we blur out the face, we blur out any individually identifying features, and we've purely focused on ergonomic magnitudes or values such as elbow angle, shoulder angle. So the average of for a given workflow, for a given day. So like pseudonymizing the data so that you're not encroaching on privacy. So
have you engaged the actual users that you're filming? Have you obviously thought about their privacy? Have you engaged them with that and communicated that to them, or how do you deal with that?
And also, so far the deployment's been like pilot deployments. So it's been on a relatively small scale with engaging the workforce.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I love the way that you're describing the problem space, and this is another conversation I'm so often having with founders, where founders are very excited about their product and their technology, and they want to spend a lot of time talking about what the technology can do. But the thing that I've really enjoyed with the conversation with you is you really know the problem space, and you really thought about what's the problem you're solving, and once you understand that problem space, then you can think about, well, what are the range of solutions that I might offer in what order might I offer them to build a platform or a product?
Yeah,
Which is fabulous.
I definitely try to, like, I always build like a Kanban board if I've got a project that needs to be solved. So I've got the backlog, doing and done. Doing, you want to constrain that to a fixed velocity, so you're not overwhelming yourself doing too much at once.
Yeah.
You constrain the velocity of the doing list and keep the backlog from the customer problems and also the technical problems. You put them both into the backlog. It's important, to constrain the doing list, so you've got 1 to 2 tasks that you're focusing on, and then the done. You drag that across, and you can see that you can see the increments of value deliver. And then I track this with a cumulative flow, so you can see the flow of the done. The doing stays as a consistent band, because because if you're doing it right, it will stay as a consistent band because you're constraining the velocity of the tasks. Then the backlog incrementally, it decreases because you work through it.
Yeah, makes sense. I always find that our backlogs grow faster than our velocity.
Yeah, that's not happening sometimes too.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, isn't it?
It's not. Yeah, it's even if the backlog does grow too, it's like the value is still being delivered. Like the done's growing as well. Like it's more to do, but you're still delivering value.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's really, really important. And so the range of the problems that you're solving there, who is your major competition? Is it consultants that are doing time motion studies? Is it how do you think about it?
We're actually partnering with some of these consulting companies, bringing on some channel partners to enable, because they've got the practical
process knowledge.
Exactly. Practical process knowledge of how to drive change in manufacturing environments from we provide the observation and the enhanced awareness and processing with recommendations on some of the key aspects, but the practical process knowledge, then the channel partners can then translate that into practical outcomes for the business.
Yeah.
Additionally, we go direct as well, where we try to we get everyone involved with the platform, frontline staff, so you can, and managers and executives. So it's not just it's not just opaque.
Yeah.
It's it's showing, okay, these are the safety benefits that we're delivering and proactive insights. So
there's so many things you mentioned there that are going so well, which I just love. A lot of entrepreneurs, including ourselves, struggle with some of these things. So things like going straight to a customer, that's often difficult because if you don't have the process knowledge, then sometimes customers say, well, you don't really understand our industry. Why would I want to talk to you? So that you've got a credibility issue. But if you try and go through a channel partner that does have that expertise, then you don't build that direct relationship. And there's always this power imbalance between you and the channel partner because they really own the customer. They've got the customer relationship, and you then begin to serve them. And you can't create and demonstrate your value directly to the customer if you're sort of working through a third party. And getting access to people on the floor and to get the data that you need. I mean, you've got a lot of great pieces in place there. Can you talk a little bit about how that eventuated? Did you go to the customer first, and then did the customer bring in the channel partner, or did you bring in a channel partner? Are you able to talk about how any of that worked?
Sure. Yeah. So customer first. Trade shows are quite an effective channel for customer acquisition.
And just walking the floors, is that meeting people who are running stands, or you had a booth?
A booth. Yeah. And speaking with customers when they come up to the booth, that sort of thing. It's quite effective. And then it's engaging with customers like on pilots and that sort of thing. And then it's a lot of it is network as well. So they know they have an existing process improvement partner that does like the lean studies and like a lean manufacturing study, and they've been doing that for a while, and then they see that we can get additional data on this process, and I guess supercharge that to unlock new insights.
And so that partner that you were introduced to, they were quite excited to work with you, were they?
Yeah.
They didn't see you as a threat?
As far as I'm aware, yeah. So that's and I think it comes to like network and introduction. So industry bodies working with industry bodies like HunterNet, for example, locally here in the Hunter region. You've got industry bodies and introductions, primarily focus on going direct. Has been the primary channel so far, and then we're also recently introducing the channel partner approach.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so good. That, I mean, it's such a fraught journey for many founders, and it's not easy. I mean, it's even if you do go direct, which is what we generally recommend to clients, is to go direct to a customer. That way, you've got a customer relationship. It helps with that power imbalance if you, instead of working just purely through a channel partner. But then you may have to go through a half a dozen or more potential channel partners to find one that really sees you as a collaborator and not a threat. And I think this is one of the challenges you have when you're building product companies is you need enough of a market size where, if the first customer doesn't work or the first partner doesn't work, that's fine, because there's 100 others that you can go to find somebody with the right mindset. Because just because rationally they should want to work with you because they don't have the capability that you have and they need the capability that you've got, doesn't mean they actually will want to work with you for whatever reason. So it's great that it's worked out for you, and it sounds like you've got a fabulous sort of early customer environment that you've created for yourself there, which is something that we highly recommend that founders should create. I'd love to switch gears and talk a little bit about the fact that you're doing consulting. We're doing consulting. So sometimes consulting is sort of seen as a dirty word in the innovation product space. But I think it's, even large businesses like, the Salesforces of the world, they have a consulting arm. It's a great way to do subsidized customer research and learn more about the customers. It's also a great way to bootstrap and keep the company funded. So can you talk to me a little bit about the role that consulting played early in the company and what you learned through that process?
Yeah, so early on, the consulting is a good way to learn, to gain practical knowledge about the customer needs, to engage with clients, and that sort of model there's flexibility in it. The reason I moved away from the consulting model to the product model is it in a startup context, it's good for consistency in you're developing one solution. You're not developing different solutions and sort of stretching I guess the capability in the workforce to you've got a clear direction on the product, and that sort of so it was April 2023 that we switched over to product based, and it's definitely a direction that I'm looking to continue.
Yeah, fabulous. I think because you even said yourself there that you've transitioned out of consulting now, haven't you?
Correct. Yeah.
In a product. So the conversation I keep having with founders, particularly now, because the capital raising environment has got a lot more difficult than it was a couple of years ago, is don't be afraid of consulting. Consulting can really be your friend in terms of allowing you to spend more time with customers and allowing you to extend your runway.
In those contexts, it's good. Being able to engage with customers directly and focus on a customer problem. It's a good pathway. You got to be watchful in the context of like if you are building a startup, you're building a startup, and it's I guess it's depends on the direction that the
company wants to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a bit of a controversial question here. You may or may not feel comfortable answering this one, but from Bike Industries, Alex, we've talked about gait detection and optimizing workflows in the past. How do you feel about the current industrial action going on at Woolworths and warehouse staff? And
I don't feel like I'm in a position to comment on any industrial action.
Yeah, I think making this a more generic question and less about just Woolworths. What does technology like yours mean for the workforce? Can you talk about it? Because the way that you've described the platform is more about providing a better environment for workers, a safer environment, an environment where there's less injuries. So can you talk about some of the positive benefits of a company deploying your platform?
Yeah. So in the context of MotionLogic, it's about comprehending like the safety events in a production environment, such as musculoskeletal disorders, repeated strain motion, bending, twisting, crouching, reaching overhead, extended reach, like all of these. They introduce fatigue and a heightened risk of injury. So this proactive indication, and we're exceptionally strong on the pixel privacy side of on the pixel privacy front, where we've got initiatives underway to ensure that when we're not encroaching on individual privacy, but we're getting the data on safety, the proactive data on safety that can improve the operating conditions with proactive communication.
Yeah. And I think this is something else that we discussed before the call is technology only gets you so far. At some point, you've got to bring policies in. It's a bit like the kind of workforce productivity monitoring that goes on. You hear about Amazon employees, for example, and employees in those kind of environments in general, which are highly monitored, feeling like it can get a little bit dystopian if the technology is pushed too far. And so it's really important to have the right policies so that this technology is used in an appropriate way. Technology is just a tool like anything. It's always a double-edged sword. It can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And so having those policies in place to make sure this kind of technology is really stays a positive impact on people in their careers, I think is the other side of the coin to technology, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So pixel privacy and that sort of privacy preserving technology, protecting the sovereignty of the individual. It's key. It's important to us. And that's been it's key in the end of it throughout the development of MotionLogic. And I think to some other companies that's not necessarily as important, but sort of is a centerpiece in the way we develop products.
Yeah, that's so good to see. So fabulous. Last question for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think AI, in particular, the space that you're in, the vision piece. Where do you see that going in the next 5 years or so with all of the AI development? What can we look forward to on the horizon?
Yeah. So in a manufacturing context, you can definitely see this for comprehending the movements of and interactions of people, tools, and materials. So safety and clear comprehension of the process. AI more broadly is having machines that can make automated decisions from video, like to look at the motion of objects in a visual scene. Track objects over time. Recognize different characteristics of having a computer that can adapt to changing circumstances. I sort of see that, and part of the reason that I really decided to focus on this in my thesis and from the robotics projects and that sort of thing is cameras. Robot hardware is commoditized, and you can buy a robot base, you can buy a robot arm. But the real value add is having this AI and learning capability that enables the machines to adapt. So, disambiguating objects. So finding object motion and comprehending what's going on in a visual scene. I definitely think there's going to be great strides in that over the next 5 years.
So just in the way that we've seen in the digital world, where we've kind of got structured data and unstructured data, where, for example, a conversation like this is an example of unstructured data. Now AI is able to turn that into structured data and make that part of your digital workflow.
Correct.
What I'm hearing you describe is a similar thing is happening in the physical world, where you're now able to use, cameras and the recognition technology that you've got to take some of that unstructured, non-digitized world and bring that into the manufacturing process. And now it doesn't matter whether you're talking about optimizing a workflow within a machine that's capturing, lots of data and has been for years, but now you've also got the operator, which now gets brought into that view of the overall process, and now we're digitizing the entire thing. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yeah. So machine learning and artificial intelligence, it really is for transforming unstructured or semi-structured data into structured data. So, traditionally, like imagery or video or audio, compared to say let's say a database table or a spreadsheet. Like a database table is about a relational database that's a structured data format. A document is semi-structured. You've got paragraph structure, you've got sentence structure. Audio, now you've got different frequencies and sound components. So that's
it's another kind of data.
Exactly. And what machine learning enables is transformation of unstructured data into structured data sets.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. I think it's a great way for entrepreneurs to view the power of AI. If you want to create 10 times improvements, it's looking at those opportunities where there's unstructured data that is available that hasn't been used to improve the quality of business processes. That now using AI, you can bring that into the digital world and start to bring that automation augmentation in. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I've really enjoyed uncovering some of the journey and the approaches that you've used. I think, like I said earlier, one of the great things about the journey that you've taken is it's so replicable for other people. There's nothing that has sort of happened on your journey that's been something that's like a magic black box that nobody can replicate. It's just lots of hard work and lots of curiosity and lots of hustle. That's another thing that I think is been great listening to you talking about the networking aspect of your journey. You've spent a lot of time networking and as entrepreneurs, we need that hustle to get out there and talk to as many people as possible. And I'm saying to founders all the time, a good measure of your success is the number of conversations you're having. The more conversations, generally, the better you're going to go. So it's been an absolute a pleasure. If people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to do that? I think we've got your email on the screen. Contact you at alex@traversal.io. And
feel free to reach out through email. Always open to connecting with strategic partners who share the vision of using artificial intelligence to improve productivity and safety. Whether you're a potential partner, safety expert, or manufacturing industry expert, feel free to reach out through email.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Alex. And finally, for any founders that are out there that are looking for more clarity on their startup journey and wish they had extra clarity and wish they had a plan that was much more tangible in terms of their journey to what exactly startup success is, feel free to visit the LeapSheep website at www.leapsheep.com and request a Startup Builder strategy session. We'd love to work with you and help you get that extra clarity. So that's a wrap for our live streams for 2024. Can you believe it? It's a year, another year gone by. And we'll see you again next year, where we're working hard to get you more guests, more questions answered, and help flip the 95% startup failure rate. Thanks again, Alex. Have a great Christmas, and we'll catch up with you next year.
You too. Thanks for having me.